Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome to another edition of the Zero Hour. I'm Tim Lloyd, joined by my man Jeff Hobbs. We've got a special crew of guests here today. So we're going to switch gears a little bit and talk about some upcoming PFL action with some guys that we're very familiar with. We've got Steve Swedish from Ruby Sports joining us, one of their agents there, one of the top management firms in the world. We're going to converse with him a little bit today about things from the management side, things they look for, things that they look for when they're looking to sign guys in the early stages of their career. Also joining us, two guys coming up on the PFL Challenger Series. We've got the Bosnian Barn Cat himself, Damir Ferhatbegovic, joining us. He's going to be fighting just about a week from now on the Challenger Series in the 155 division. And then a couple weeks after that, we've got Alex Pergande also joining us, and he's going to be making his professional debut, which is awesome, on that PFL Challenger Series. Jeff, I'm excited to dive into this one. You're familiar with all three of these guys. Should be a fun conversation. We should be able to really kind of give some insight to our viewers on, some of the inner workings and things that go into the management side of things, and what they look for, and that process of signing guys at an early stage, getting them on that next the higher platforms.
Yeah, I'm excited about this show. We talked about doing stuff like this for a long time. We focus hot and heavy, on our local regional scene, but we've always talked about how important we think it is to start bringing in management companies, promoters, even from other promotions, matchmakers from other shows. Try to get referees in and just show another side of what goes behind all this. And I think in our position, where we're getting a lot of these kind of debut professionals, guys that we see and bring up through their first handful of fights, they're always asking us questions. Well, how do I get to the next level? How do I get to the next show? We can tell them all day, but it's going to be a little different, I think, hearing it straight from a manager's and an agency's mouth. One, so they know we're not bullshitting them, and two, so they really do. Steve and I talk quite a bit, and we talk a lot about the difference between a plan and a blueprint. And the difference between having a plan. Plan just means what you want to do. A blueprint shows you exactly how to do that. And I think that's going to be important for them to hear. And not only that, we got two guys that followed the blueprint and did it the way that Steve and Daniel at Ruby would like to see guys do it to get to this spot.
Let's jump in first with Damir. Damir, you're up in action first between you and Alex. It's going to be next Friday night, and you're taking on BJ Bland in the lightweight division for the PFL Challenger Series. Let's talk about that a little bit, and let's also talk a little bit about the lead up. Of course, this last time out, devastating beating of David Robbins out there. And then after that, it was a little harder for you to find fights. We were able to find Nate Williams to step up to fight you. He's a guy that's actually been on the main PFL show, disposed of him without too many issues. And then things got very difficult on this end to match you. You're a guy that the guys in the Southeast they're not lining up to fight. Let's talk about how much of a relief it is to have a good, solid opponent on this PFL card. Nice payday and great opportunity if you go out there and shine to get signed to PFL for the regular season.
Yeah, so first and foremost, I want to thank Damini and Ruby Sports for getting me this fight. They're the ones that really got me into the whole PFL Challenger Series. And yeah, just like you said, better than anyone, that it was so hard to find me a fight. And I took a step back and I decided, I was like, okay, so what's the next step? If I can't get any more local fights, what do I need to do? I hit up Scott. I talked to Danny on the phone for about 30 minutes or so. We, made a plan of what I wanted to do with my MMA career. And then we finally decided on getting on the PFL. I think that's the best step for me right now. We tried Contender on UFC a couple of times, but it didn't work out the way I wanted it to. So, yeah, I'm just excited to be on this PFL Challenger Series. And, yeah, BJ Bland's a tough opponent. He's had a lot of experience. I think he's had like 26 pro fights or something like that. Trains at a really good gym of City Kickboxing in New Zealand, training with Dan Hooker and Izzy and all those guys. So I know he's going to be coming in good shape. He's going to be a tough opponent, but just skill set wise, I think I got a little one up on him on there.
Now, the way this Challenger Series works, from what we've seen, very similar to the Contender Series in that you've got to go out there and you got to perform. You got to put on a show. Going out there and grinding out a decision win typically is not going to be enough. to get that contract. Does that give you any extra pressure to go out there and get that finish? Knowing you, like I know you, you're always looking for the finish anyway. It's not really your style to grind. But is there something in the back of your mind? It's like, man, I have to finish out here if I want to get that next step. It's probably not going to be good enough to grind out a decision, or is it a business as usual for you and you go out there and take it like any other fight? I guess in a nutshell, what's more important to you, getting the win at all costs, whether it means a boring win, or going out there, putting on the line and taking those risks to get that contract?
Yeah, so when I first came out here, I talked to Crouch about the whole thing. The Challenger Series is a new thing they're implementing, so not a lot of people are familiar with it. I told them, I was like, hey, man, I got to like go out there, do something spectacular to earn this contract, because like you said, like hugging someone on the ground for 15 minutes, doing no damage is not going to get you the contract. He reassured me, he's like, hey, man, if you fight the way you fight the last couple of fights, last 2 or 3 fights, you're going to get that contract. So, that's reassuring to hear from such a high-level coach like John. Going into the fight, I just need to relax and just do what I do normally in a fight, and hopefully it's enough. But yeah, so that took the pressure off, of having like that image in your head that you got to finish in like some flying knee or whatever, flying armbar, something like that. But yeah, I'm just gonna go out there the way I usually fight, and hopefully it's enough. But yeah, first and foremost, getting the win is number one. Whether it's a boring way or a spectacular way, whatever, but I am looking for a highlight reel knockout.
Jeff, I'll tag off to you here. What you got for the Barn Cat?
Well, I was thinking kind of the same things. At the end of the day, you win, everything takes care of itself. At the end of the day, and that's kind of the way I felt. Before you even answered that, Damir, was I think the important thing is to get the win, and um, and then everything else will fall into place. If for some reason the contract didn't come after the win, I think you're talented enough. I think you're talented enough that the second shot will come. But man, I want to talk about just rewind a little bit, and I know this is something that probably doesn't get talked about a lot, and it may be because it's just one of those things that it's your business, nobody else's business. But you've had some other opportunities, come through the pipeline, some short notice stuff. What is it? We see a lot of guys a lot of times jump on those short notice things, 1 week, 2 weeks, big show, big opportunities, and they jump on them and things don't work out their way. What was it about the timing and those situations that you were given the call about that made you step back and just say, you know what, this is a great opportunity. Most people would kill for this, but this just doesn't feel right now. What was going on at that time that made you feel so confident that you could do this another way and get on these, the type show you're on next week?
Yeah, so like I had a short notice UFC call up to fight one of the Chinese guys. I forgot his name, Ru Zhang, I believe. He just fought not too long ago in the UFC on a pay-per-view, and he looked pretty good. He ended up losing that fight, but he still looked good. It was 3 days before my birthday, and I was just too overweight. I didn't want to, go out there and lose all that weight and not perform, and then the UFC brushes me under the rug and never talks to me about it again. So I wanted to make sure that if I were to take a short notice fight, it would be when I was already training, when I was already on weight, and I know that I could come in there as close to 100% as possible. But at that time, that just wasn't the case.
Well, I would also love to stop for a second and talk about this beautifully groomed mustache that you've grown. I fucking love it, bro. It fits you well. It's kind of got a Super Troopers type feel, but we'll save that for another interview, man. But I'm going to ask this question of Alex as well, so he can be thinking about it. But I want to ask you first too. Kind of in my lead up, we talked about young guys doing it the right way, young guys in the regional scene doing it the right way. What advice would you give some of these guys, that are, currently fighting for Aries and fighting in the regional scene? What advice would you give them? Kind of looking back, if you had known this back when you started, what advice would you give them right now about how they're handling their careers and what's the correct path to stay on?
Yeah, so I've been fighting since I was like 17, 18, doing kickboxing shows at 17, started my MMA career at 18, turned pro at 21. I think the number one thing I would advise is to take it slow and not to rush things. Um, I only had 3 years of amateur MMA experience. I think I had like 6 or 7 amateur fights. and I turned pro, and I was trying to, get to the next level immediately. I was looking for UFC when I went like 3-0, and that just it. For some guys, it's realistic, but for others, it's not. Take your amateur career as a learning experience, especially because once you turn pro, that record resets down to 0-0. Even if you lose, that's fine. At least you're doing a lot of amateur MMA fights. You're learning from those fights and taking it into your pro career. But yeah, the most important thing I would say is just not to rush it. Let things align the way they're supposed to align, and yeah, just take your time with it.
And how important is it to where's he at over here? Listen to guys like this. You stepped out. I know you had a lot of management companies reaching out to you at the time when you signed. How important is it to trust the guys that are leading your career?
That's one of the most important things, I believe. I trained with Scott Holtzman pretty much my entire career when I first started, and Ben Harrison. And if you know them personally, they're such great guys. I would never think they're trying to, uh, look like screw me over in any way or anything like that. They had my best interest on their mind through my entire career. And Scott has talked so much about Danny as a manager and as a friend, as a partner. So I knew I could take his word and sign with Ruby and be happy with it.
Let's move on to Alex here. Alex, you're getting ready to make your professional debut. Long awaited, something we've talked about, for a year or so at this point. Unblemished amateur credentials, coming off a absolute blistering of Bronson Bazorgi last time out, and a performance that I thought was just breathtaking, really. I've not seen an amateur on that level in quite some time. Taking a big step up here in your pro debut. You don't see a whole lot of guys that are getting this kind of opportunity in your first pro fight. Of course, you'll be fighting in a couple weeks on the PFL Challenger Series as well. Let's talk a little bit about it. You've got Joe Ham in front of you, a guy that is from the Georgia region. Oddly enough, that card I've seen has quite a bit of Southeastern flavor to it. Fair amount of Southeastern talent on that card. He's coming from that NFC scene down there that we're somewhat familiar with. Let's talk about this matchup for Joe against Joe Ham. And then for you, I would assume that it would be the developmental type deals that are on the table for whoever shines the most in their fight. Kind of the same question we asked Damir. Is there any pressure to go out there and make sure you get that finish, not play it safe? Or is the number one priority, make sure you start that pro career off 1-0?
I'm really just worrying about the win. If obviously a flashy knockout comes, I'll take it. Right now I'm just looking really for anything I can take. I know the guy that I'm fighting is going to be really wild. He's going to come out, he's going to be really coming after me. So I already know, what to do, stay on the outside, wait till, he gets a little bit tired, and then come in and see what I can do. If the submission is there, I'll take it. In my amateur career, like my first 3 fights were, they were all submission. And my last fight, I was like, man, I'm tired of submissions. I set my mind to a knockout. I was like, I want to do a knockout this fight. And it really, and it happened. So I know, like, whatever I set my mind to, I can really achieve. And so for this upcoming fight, I don't really have anything to set my mind to. I just want to go out there. I want to get the win. It doesn't matter, as long as I keep winning, I'll just keep climbing the ladder, and that's all that matters for me.
Yeah, no doubt, man. You're one of these guys that I would label an uber prospect, one of these guys that, coming out of the amateurs immediately, in my opinion, one of the top prospects in the nation. What's it been like trying to sort out, it's time to go pro. It's not time. You only had about 2 years of amateur experience. Had some injuries, I know, that have set back some of your other amateur fights. What was the catalyst that said, hey, it's time for me to go pro? Even though it's actually now been. Man, how has it been since your last amateur fight? It's been going on close to a year now, I guess, hasn't it? Real close, I would think. Was there any hesitation, coming back off of an injury where you wanted to make sure that your body was healed up right, take an amateur fight, or was it straight to the pros, no hesitation?
Man, honestly, it's been a crazy ride. Like ever since my amateur career started, I always knew I wasn't going to get too many MMA fights in, just because I've had 88 amateur boxing matches, and over 500 wrestling matches throughout my career. So I already know I've taken a beating. My body's taken a beating. My brain obviously has taken a beating. So I can't keep fighting for free. Even though I am 20 years old, like as long as I keep taking it slow, climb up the rankings, like I should be fine. I mean, yeah, these injuries, man, it's been something else, man. Before my last fight, obviously I tore my left AC joint, and then recently, a couple months ago, I tore my other shoulder. But I can't really talk about it too much.
No.
No, of course.
Just some legal matters going into it. But yeah, it's been unlucky, man. I think it was the day I tore this shoulder, the day I was supposed to sign my pro contract for Aries, I think, my pro debut. But I mean, hey, I'll take PFL,
No doubt, no doubt. It all worked out just fine for you. Who's been getting you ready for this, man? I've been seeing on your social media, you've been getting some high level training. Damir's out there at the lab in Arizona getting some high level training. How about yourself? Who's been getting you ready for this fight? I know you've got obviously a great team at National MMA. It looks like you've been getting out and getting some other sparring in as well.
Yeah, I've been going. I went down to Sanford MMA for 2 weeks. Obviously, like I had like huge guys like come up and always help me and really supporting me, like Mickey Gal. He really, that dude. As soon as he don't even know me, he don't know my name. He gave me a shout out in an interview that he was doing without even knowing my name, just because he watched me spar. And he was like, they asked him like who's gonna be like one of the top prospects. And he said my name. Is like, do your research. This is this Russian kid. He's about to have his debut for PFL, and but yeah, that was pretty awesome to like be surrounded by those high level guys, and like knowing where your level is at, knowing where you can push the pace, where your weaknesses are. It's just a great experience overall. I'm finishing this camp up over here at National MMA. Obviously, Dorian Price is a legend, man. Man, he's crazy good. He's we're working on a game plan. Obviously, my jiu-jitsu coach Brian, we're working on a lot of stuff with him. So it's just gonna come down to I feel like me being just a better fighter, and trying to stay calm is probably one of the biggest things I have to do, especially knowing that this is a 5-minute round now. But yeah, just staying calm, staying composed, and getting the win. That's really all I have to say.
Jeff, what you got for Alex?
Well, when it comes to Alex, man, we talk about I've known this guy forever, or I've known this guy, before he started. And with Alex, it truly holds true. Like I come from old school Nashville MMA, early 2000s, mid 2000s, 2009, when Alex and his brother were 5-year-old kids. And we just refer to them as the little Russian kids, running around the gym, getting locked in the cage as a playpen, pretty much, jumping on everybody's backs. And it's been such an amazing thing. Well, it's been a sad thing to watch because that means I'm getting older, but an amazing thing to watching again these kids. And you know, looking back at older fighters that have been in the gym before Alex even knew who they were. I'm friends with a lot of those guys, old school guys at Nashville MMA, and they'll say, "Wonder whatever happened to those two little Russian kids." And it's like, well, as a matter of fact, let me show them to you. And his brother Alex, correct me if I'm wrong, has gone into the military, had a hugely successful career in the military, and is doing so well for himself. But it's been, I don't necessarily even have a question, man. I just want to let you know what an honor it's been and how cool it's really been, knowing you from a 5-year-old kid and seeing all this potential and just kind of joking around the gym. That little badass right there is going to be something when he gets older. And it really happened and it really come to fruition, how has just look at the experience as a whole. You talked about the beating. You're only 20 years old, but you've got 15 plus years of wear and tear on your body. How has just this whole combat sports experience been for you? Do you feel like an old man at 20 years old?
Sometimes.
Sometimes.
Some days. I try. I'm really trying to start focus on my recovery more ever since I started my MMA career. Because obviously, like throughout boxing and wrestling, it was just old school, just cut weight all the time, grind, no recovery, just eat whatever. But now, I'm taking my supplements seriously every single day. I'm taking my diet more seriously now. Obviously, I have cheat meals here and there, but who doesn't? I'm taking my recovery seriously. I'm hitting the sauna, at least twice a week. I'm doing ice baths. My body's feeling real good when I start taking care of it, and that's why I feel like no matter how much wear and tear you're going through, no matter how much beating you're going through, as long as you take care of it and you stay consistent with it. If you're not consistent with it, it's not going to work. If you're staying consistent with it, your body's going to thank you, and you're going to feel real good. And I feel like that's where I'm at now. I'm taking care of myself real nice, and it's been a hell of a camp, and I feel great.
Awesome. Well, you guys are management teammates, if you will. Alex, you going to check out Damir's fight? Damir, you going to try to check out Alex's fight?
Yeah, for sure,
Yeah,
man.
absolutely.
All right, Tim, I think we've talked to both the fighters now. Now we need to talk to one of the guys that helps lead careers like this and looks for shots. When he called us about a month or so ago and said, "Hey guys, I know I said Alex would make his debut with you guys, but obviously, Steve, we understood and it was a no-brainer. But Tim, let's talk to the man, Steve Swedish.
Just for the record, that was not an easy phone call to make.
Nah, man, that's a good one to make. I'm happy for it. So, Steve, we got Steve Swedish next. We'll get to Steve, of course, one of the agents with Ruby Sports, and one of the guys that has, kind of taken a lot of the guys in our region that have been signed to Ruby Sports and is handling them. Steve, my man, I'm very excited to talk to you. I got some good questions for you. Let's start off with this. Obviously, Alex is under your wing. You've got a few other guys, up and coming prospects from our region that you've had your eye on. What are some of the factors? What are some of the things that you look at when you're looking to sign one of these guys to a management deal? Obviously, talent is going to be
Sure.
one of the big ones. But what are some of the intangibles? There's a lot of guys that are talented out there that still may not be as appealing.
Yeah, so I mean that's a great question. First of all, it's nice thanks for inviting me on. But that's a great question. I think my philosophy and how I kind of go after which talent to go after really was instilled by a couple of different people. One, Dustin Ortiz, Nashville MMA OG. He's the one that got me into this, right? He was my roommate, and I saw exactly how not to manage and how not to work through fighters. And he was a big quality over quantity guy. But I've been with Ruby for almost 4 years now, working with Danny. And one of the big things that he told me initially was we're not an agency that's looking to sign everybody. We're looking to sign quality, not only quality, talented athletes, but quality people. If you notice and you go through our roster, we don't have the loudmouth shit talkers. And so to me, it's as important as how they kind of carry themselves professionally and as a person, as well as the talent level. I mean, you look at a guy. I mean, I've been out with Scott Holtzman a number of times and Danny, and I've heard a ton about Damir. And obviously, I signed Charlie. I know Damir, you fought Charlie early on in his career. So I kind of was led to all these guys through Dustin and since I moved down to Memphis. But I mean, to answer your question, Tim, it's really it's upside. It's how they carry themselves. It's how they treat their careers. Is this something that they're looking to do as a hobby, or is this something that they're looking to make some noise? And then from there, it's really about understanding what their goals are and kind of setting Jeff, to your point, kind of that blueprint, not just a plan. And that's really good people, hard working, and guys that are really going to treat their career like a profession and not just a hobby. I mean, that's a big thing.
Yeah, it makes sense for sure. So we're seeing more and more guys get signed to management before they've made their professional debut. Guys that are on the tail end of their amateur careers signing to management before they've had their first pro fight. And in the past, you would see management kind of wait and see, how's this guy going to pan out? Is he going to get his record kind of developed first, 2-3-0, something like that before they sign him up? What is it about some of these guys? Obviously, Alex is a great example. Avamai just made his pro debut last week. Yep. What are some of the things you're looking for in those type guys that you're going to take a chance on them before they've ever even had a professional fight to be able, like I said, many management companies are going to wait and let their record kind of get somewhere before they'll start trying to groom them.
Well, I mean, that's a great question. A question that I get asked a lot as far as amateur fighters. I mean, even when I'm at former Valor shows and Aries shows and things like that, everybody kind of asks that question. It's a little bit of a gamble. I think with Alex, it was a little different. I went in and I met Alex, and Alex, I think I met you and your dad. It's got to be 2.5, almost 3 years ago. I think it was right after you turned 18. Literally watched him spar. Went up to Charlie and said, "Who's that kid?" And just he was. I mean, at that time, I think you were like 5'10 and a half, maybe walking around at like 160 pounds. Now you're like 6'1", 6'2", like 180. It's crazy how much you've grown, but. It was a gamble, but you see some talent. You see some just raw talent. Ava was another one. He had a very decorated, won a bunch of belts as an amateur, and I think it really did a lot of maturing. I think we saw that last fight week and a half ago with him as far as how he treats it. But it's a gamble in a lot of cases. I try to stay. I don't want to say I try to stay away. I try to tell guys or girls, hey, let's get a couple of fights kind of below, get a couple of fights under your belt, and we'll kind of see where we go from there. And I'll keep in touch with them. It's as much work getting a 0-0 guy, and Jeff and Tim, you guys both know this with Elvis from last year. It took me 2 years to get that kid a freaking pro debut. And it's as much work to go in a 0-0 and a 1-0 guy as it is to 5-0 or 6-0 guy like a Damir or Alex or something like that. So, and then everybody's getting younger. You see a lot of other agencies out there going after guys that are 5, 6-0 at welterweight, at lightweight that are amateurs. But once again, it goes back to kind of the quality versus quantity. I do this because I love it. I don't do it because I have to. This isn't my full-time gig. I've got a full-time job. That's why the level of athlete and the level of character have to be high. And we're not looking to sign. I think that's one of the differentiators of our agency is we're not looking to sign everybody. That's just not what we're doing. So I don't know. I'm not sure if that answered your question, Tim. But
no, it does actually. It leads me to my next one actually too. So when you've got a guy like Alex who is making his professional debut, is there any? Obviously, I think it depends on the situations. Some guys are a little more advanced than others. But when you get an opportunity like he has put in front of him, nice payday, nice exposure, opportunity for a PFL developmental contract. Is there any hesitation at all about? Am I running them out there too early? Do we potentially get exposed out here, start 0-1, God forbid, or is it just, when obviously, like I said, Alex's case is a little bit different. He's an elite level talent. But with some of your other, pro debut type guys, would there be hesitation to run them out there into something like that this early?
I think it's got to be the right type of prospect. I mean, I think Damir hit the nail on the head, right? It's about bringing them up slow and smart. It's not necessarily about, our job as agents and as a management agency is really about not getting them there. It's getting them there and they're ready to stay. And I think you see a lot of other guys out there that are just all about, hey, I got somebody on Contender. Hey, I got somebody in the UFC, or hey, I got somebody on Bellator. They go 0-1, 0-2, and they're cut. So we're trying to stay away from that. And that's Alex and I had a very, very long conversation about what the upside was, what the downside was. I think for a guy like him making his pro debut on a show like that, you see so many guys that are 3-0, 4-0, then they go to LFA, they go to CFFC, they go to Fury or a bigger regional show where there's a lot more people, there's a lot more lights, a lot more flare. You're on Fight Pass. A lot of people are watching, kind of get that deer in headlights. And I feel like this checked a lot of boxes off as far as giving him, 1, the exposure to media, 2, announcing himself to the world, 3, getting those bright lights, jitters out. And I'll be honest, I put Alex up as a pro debut against any kid in the freaking country. And I would argue that till I'm blue in the face.
Yeah, I can't argue that at all. Lots of guys that are much more experienced have turned that action down, so I can vouch for you there. So if moving on to the next thing here, then I'll let Jeff take over. If you've got, what would you tell upcoming prospects that are looking to get in with a management company? What advice would you give them on their end on what they need to do to make themselves more appealing, to make themselves more of a sought-after commodity, if you will, to get those offers from management? Not necessarily saying it has to be with Ruby, but just in general,
Sure.
When you're looking to sign with management, what are some of the things that management will catch the eye of management for some of these upcoming guys?
I think one of the things is everybody says that intangible. I mean, I feel like intangible in fighting is overused quite a bit, but I think one of the things, and at the beginning when I started working with Ruby, when I was just managing Dustin, I don't think I could have told you, but I've been at more regional shows and more big regional shows and more UFC fights than I can count, but it really comes down to one of the big things is killer instinct. You see so many guys that will hurt somebody and don't recognize that they're hurt and will let them back in the fight, and that'll really cost them. And then you see guys like Damir and Alex that they get somebody hurt. It is a shark with blood in the water. They will go after and they will just finish that damn kid. Whoever it is, they don't even think. It's just instinct, and that's not in everybody.
These two guys do not have that problem.
No, not at all. And that's and once again, that's something that not only management looks at. That's something that Bellator, all the major promotions are looking at. They're looking for finishers, and if you're looking, and I think that's probably the biggest thing, right? And not forcing it, but being smart about it. And that's why when you talk about is Damir going to go for the finisher, is Alex going to go for the finish? All those guys got to do in there is step in the cage and be themselves, and the finish is going to happen. You don't have to worry about forcing it. It's just who they are as fighters, and it's just something in their brain that just kind of clicks. So that's something that I would look for as far as being appealing. It's tough to market somebody who's and there are regional fighters in the Mid-South that are 8-9-0 with 9 decision wins, and it's hard to market that. So marketability as far as not who you are as a person. If you're outspoken, I mean, I would, like I said, I go back to Dustin. He was a quiet, hardworking dude, and that's kind of what I built my foundation on. So it's kind of your social media presence is important for your marketability, but it really comes down to how you handle yourself. Are you in there training, or is it, well, I got to get in shape 3 times a year so I can get my 3 fights in? Being a professional about it, and kind of how you carry yourself, how you treat promoters. I mean, Jeff, you and I have had how many conversations? Hey, that kid just won. And you tell me, hey, somebody to look at. First question is, how is he as a person? How does he treat you guys? How does he interact with the medicals, with the officials? With how does that work? Carry yourself as a professional. If this is something that you want to do, you got to treat it that way. This is not for everybody, and people want to work with people who they like and who they trust. And so I hope that answered your question.
It does very well, and actually it makes a lot of sense, because if you think about it, once you start representing someone, you kind of become that media, that go-between between the promotion and that fighter. So if that's a fighter that routinely fucks up or messes up or just drops the ball on medicals, or what I mean, you're the one that has to go have that conversation. And so the guys that put you in that position as little as possible have to be
it's not a good time when I get a text from Jeff saying, "Hey man, we're missing 2 of the 4 medicals. What's going on?" And then I got to have that call.
Yeah, your dude's being an asshole. Yeah.
At that point, you're just being lazy, and you're making me work harder than I need to.
No doubt. Jeff, I'll tag off to you, man. We'll wrap it up here. What you got for Steve?
Well, I mean, just leading off into that, 2 things. One, there was a phrase we used to say back in XFC, when we were running XFC out of Florida with John Prisco about Scott Holtzman. And I've only used it on 3 people, and that's Scott, Damir, and Alex. And that is a fighter who has an IQ for violence. It's just, they see it, they thrive on it. They will be the nicest person in the world. But the IQ they have for violence and a violent streak, I've only used that on 3 people, and 2 of them are sitting here right now. But and to piggyback off how you ended that, Steve, and I'm only saying this because I love the kid to death and everything worked out. With Ava, that was one of the main things, leading up to signing him for so long.
Mm-hmm.
You had heard stories about the past. You had, seen old clips from the past and things like that. And you did your due diligence to make sure that, this young man had matured and had changed and had, made some adjustments from the way he handled business before you 2 agreed to sign and become partnership. So it's not just lip service. I've watched you actually go through that. And, there was a time where it was this guy is an uber talent and has a lot of upside, but I don't know. I don't know, and I have to find out these other factors first before we can move forward. So, kudos that it's not just something. It's not a tagline or a catchphrase. I mean, I've watched you do it, but you've talked a little bit about what it takes for you to work with a fighter. Let's talk a little bit about. We ask about advice to fighters. What is your advice to promotions? Because I pride myself on our relationship. In fact, I'm going to
Mhm.
call you here in a minute after we get off, and I'm going to bust your balls about someone's fight purse, and we're going to talk about that.
Can't wait.
Yeah, but obviously, you got a lot of fighters out there. And you're having to deal with a lot of different promoters and a lot of different personalities. What are
Mhm.
some of the things that frustrate you, I guess is the best way to say it? Or what are some things that you would like promotions to understand when it comes to dealing with management and dealing with a fighter through a manager?
That's a great question, and I feel like it's. I'm gonna try to toe the line a little bit, but be transparent and honest at the same time. I mean, ultimately, let's just break it down, right? My job first and foremost is to have Alex and Damir's best interest in mind. That's all that matters, right? That I work for them. I'm an extension to them to negotiate and get them the best matchups and the most money they can in that instance, right? With Danny and I. So you guys as promoters, your job is to put on the most exciting fights, right? So there's a natural contradiction just right there. And that's where I think, and I'm not saying, and I think what a manager's job is to toe the line and get the walk away from a negotiation where either where we both feel like we got what we wanted, whether it's a couple $100 more in a purse for our fighter, or it's the matchup that we really wanted. So I feel like I've worked very hard, and I think Ruby has as well. All the agents, the different agents that work for Ruby, we've all we've all worked very hard to kind of build our reputation as somebody that's easy to work with. I think that's the biggest thing. But as far as understand, there are certain promotions. I'm definitely not singling you guys out. There are certain promotions out there that ultimately just want a yes man kind of manager that says, what do you mean you're not going to do it? Why wouldn't you do it? Why wouldn't you take that matchup? And then it's like, okay, you really want to get into it? Well, this, and this. And ultimately, every guy that I sign or every athlete that I work with, we sit down and say, what is the ultimate goal? What is the ultimate goal? Alex, I talked to you 2.5 years ago. You said, I want to be in the UFC. And I said, is it UFC or bust, or you want to be in a big promotion and make the most amount of money you can? And he's like, that. And I said, okay. So everything that we do and every matchup and every fight that we work with promoters on is to get them to that ultimate goal. And if they say something or somebody in their camp says something to change it, okay, then we need to revisit it. That's what I keep in mind in working with promotions, right? It's whether or not this matchup makes sense, because it's either kind of one or the other, right? You either try to control the narrative with the opponents, or you want to get a big payday. It's very, very difficult in this sport to get both. So goes back to Damir's point, right? Building that foundation and taking it slow early on. But I guess understanding that. That 99% of the time, most managers out there, most agents out there are just really trying to do what's best for the fighters. And there is a reason out there. There is a reason behind what they do and don't do, whether they tell you or not.
How often do you have to look at a promotion and say your plan does not match our plan, and simply what you're wanting? You're looking for a main eventer that's going to do this, this, and this, but this is not the type of opponent we're looking for. This is not the time that we're at. Your plan simply does not match our plan.
Literally just had to shoot an email right before we got on this that they said, hey, here you go. And I said, this is not the opponent we're looking. This is not the type of opponent we're looking for. So it happens quite a bit. And then after a while, it's, well, if these are the types of options you're going to give me, I mean, there's a lot of solid promotions out there, right? And if you do things the right way, most of the time you're going to have good relationships. So it happens. It doesn't happen all the time, but it definitely does happen, especially if you've got guys like Alex and Damir where they've got options. That makes our job a lot of fun, right? We're not banging down the door of promotions and say, hey, come on, get these guys on an undercard. It's no, promotions are reaching out to us, which doesn't always happen, but it's good when it does happen because it really allows us to talk with the coaches, talk with their head coaches, talk with the athletes, and say, hey, I think this is a good matchup, but I think we can do better, and just make sure, once again, everything that we do has to be with the athlete's best interest in mind. If you're not doing it for that, you should.
Tim and I loved COVID time. Because the tables had turned. You guys were banging down our doors saying,
yeah, please, I'm not upset that that's gone.
Yes, please get us a fight, please.
Yes.
We didn't know how to act, but we took full advantage of that. Tim, we went about a good 6 months without paying a bit of travel, I think.
Yeah, they were flying themselves here from Hawaii, man. It was great. Wrap us up here, guys. One more thing for you, Steve, and then I'm going to let everybody get some shout-outs to sponsor love and things like that. How difficult is it to play that balancing act between, obviously, like you mentioned, guys like Damir, Alex, they're going to have opportunities. They've got promotions that wanted to use them. They're exciting fighters. People see that. What about for the guys that are maybe struggling a little bit to get those matchups? Is it hard to balance between those guys chirping in your ear, hey, man, I need a fight. You got to give me a fight. But all the offers are not necessarily the greatest offers for that fighter. You know, time ticks and people get impatient. Is that a challenge that you face?
It is, and I think that's where one of the biggest complaints you will ever hear about an athlete and their agent is not knowing what's going on or lack of communication. And anytime I get an offer or I speak to a promotion on somebody's behalf, obviously if it's a text, I don't reach out to them. But if it's any type of conversation that has some significance to it that could impact who they could get matched up with or anything like that, I talk them through it and I said, I didn't even want to bring this to you. I already turned it down, but here's why. And as long as you help them understand why you're doing what they're doing and that it has to do with how we're wanting to do it, generally they understand. But it's been tough. Like I said, last year when I had Elvis, I called Jeff and I'm like, dude, we'll pay for travel. We just want to get him on a card. So it's really around communication. Elvis and I talked almost at least once every other week when I was talking to promotions. So it's really, it can be challenging if you don't lay the right foundation and the right level of trust and make sure you're communicating with why. They have to understand why. Fighters need to understand why you're doing what you're doing, because essentially in a lot of cases, agents will slide into DMs on Instagram. You've never met them. They don't know it. There's a number of fighters that I manage, I talk to quite a bit, but I've never met in person. I'm going to meet them hopefully in the next month or two. But they're essentially trusting somebody they don't know with their career. So you have to over communicate. You have to help them understand why. Otherwise, the relationship is bound to fail.
And that's where not all management companies are created equal, because I know that you communicate well with your fighters. I know there's some managers that don't, and then I hear the grumbling from their signed fighters saying, hey, man, my manager's they're just not doing nothing for me, you know? When maybe they are, maybe they're not, but there's just not that communication there to alleviate those worries. Steve, where can fighters reach you if they want you to have a look at them? Is there an email that they can, if a fighter out there wants you guys to have a look at them, they can send you footage, etc.?
Sure. It's Steve at Ruby SE, S as in Sam, E as in Edward.com. Our website is rubysE.com. Instagram handle is at Steve Swedish, all one word, Swedish like the meatball. You guys can see it on the screen. But yeah, happy to help and do whatever I can to kind of further their careers. I appreciate you guys for having me on.
We appreciate you coming on, man. Hopefully we can keep churning out some good talent here in this region, and they can and take advantage of some of these opportunities. Damir, I'll go to you first, and Alex, let's get some shout outs where they're due. Any sponsors, training partners, friends, family you want to give some love to ahead of this big PFL Challengers fight next week?
Yeah, so I just want to first off thank the MMA Lab. Always welcome arms anytime I have a big fight coming up. I'll come out here and do my camp. Awesome training. Thank you to John Crouch, all my training partners down at Shields, all my friends and family that supported me throughout the years.
And where can our fans follow you on social media so they keep up with your career?
Yeah, I've got an Instagram if you want to follow me on there, officially Damir, same as Twitter. And yeah, that's it.
Alex, I'm going to let you get some shout outs as well, and also close this out. Let us know where we can follow your social media.
Honestly, I want to shout out Steve, man. That's one of the biggest guys that I trust and I put all my trust into. Steve's been amazing, man. He's helping me with everything. He's communicating like he should, man. One of the best managers, best manager I've ever had, obviously. But yeah, just shout out to Dorian Price, Brian Tidwell, all my training partners over at National MMA. Everyone's helped me throughout this camp, sponsors. Shout out to my mom and my dad. Obviously, they're a huge support in this. My dad's being my coach for this upcoming fight. So, yeah, shout out to my girlfriend, man. She's always supporting me. And, big shout out to her. Super
Team Reaper.
Yeah, exactly. Team Reaper right here. Reaper, shout out to them, man. Always hooking me up and taking care of me. And for social media, Instagram's just Alexei Pergande, Alexei Pergande. So yeah, you can just check me out, see if you like what I post, and yeah, that's pretty much it. I'm ready to put on a show.
You can catch both of these fine young athletes on the PFL Challenger Series. Damir's up next weekend, taking on BJ Bland. A couple weeks after that, Alexei Pergande makes his professional debut against Joe Hand. Encourage you guys to check these out. I know that they're going to put on a show. Thanks so much for joining us, guys. Steve, Damir, Alexei, Jeff. Appreciate everybody hanging out with us. Hopefully, we were able to give y'all some insight on the inner workings of how all this shit works. And stay tuned, guys. Make sure you give us a like, a subscribe. We'll be back next week with more content. Best of luck, gentlemen. We'll see y'all next time.
Take care.
Thanks for having me, guys.